Welcome back to the Command Your Brand Show. I am your host, Jeremy Ryan Slate. And before we get into this conversation today, I wanted to make a quick announcement for you. You're going to see today's interview has a different host. And today's host is Josh Silvestro. He is the brand ambassador for Command Your Brand. And with the company growing and with so many different things happening, Josh is going to be hosting a good deal of our episodes today and in the future. And I'm excited for you to get a chance to experience his fun style, his inquisitiveness, and I think you're going to learn just as much as you do with me, maybe even more. So you guys are going to enjoy watching many of the future episodes with Josh. I'll still be here from time to time, but I hope you're going to enjoy today's episode with Josh.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the Command Your Brand Show. This is exciting. I'm your new host, Josh Silvestro, brand ambassador of the Command Your Brand Show. We help CEOs and founders get their message out on top-rated podcasts. Grab our new book, rated the #1 PR book on Amazon, bestpodcastbook.com. A reminder before we get into today's conversation to comment on and like this video and smash the subscribe button. So if you want to join and command your brand for podcasting and everything about that. So I want to go over our next guest here, our guest who is an amazing human being. Just to kind of give you a little insight of what he's done. He's done multiple different things. He's a top leader of network marketing, achieving $1 billion in sales and leaving a significant global impact around the world. He's an author, a mentor. He's a no-nonsense. He has no nonsense about anything, including approaches in enriching thousands, helping tens of millions. And I would definitely want to introduce him to you. His name is Dave. So Dave, tell us about you. Tell us, everything about you. I'd like to know about you, man. Welcome on the show, by the way.
well, first off, thanks, Josh. That was a very nice introduction.
Yeah.
I'll try and live up to that in the sense of a reputation. But it was many, many years ago. I grew up in a neighborhood, and there were a couple of families that lived in the neighborhood that seemed to be doing a little bit better than the rest of the neighborhood. You know, they drove convertible cars and they had fancy lifestyles. And so I was enamored by success. I didn't understand it, didn't know what it was. And anyway, I was living in Canada, and I got involved with an idea of distribution. And I went down to California. I found a product to distribute into Canada, importing it because the health food industry was just getting started. And I walked into this store, and I wanted to see if that store would be interested in my product at that point in time. And I made this presentation. And then behind this beaded doorway, a guy walks out. He says, "Wow, that was the best presentation I ever heard." And I, whoa, admiration. This was great. And he says, "Is that the only product you represent?" And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, how would you like to represent hundreds of products?" Well, my mind just went, whoa. Fantastic. When this guy likes me and all that kind of stuff. And I go to a meeting, and this is what got it started. Mm-hmm. And I was the only person in the auditorium. It was a school auditorium, and a gentleman who talked to me at that time, his name was Jim Jantz. And he said this. He said, "Dave, how would you like to own a Coca-Cola machine on every corner of every street? And every time somebody bought a Coke, you made a nickel?" Wow. I have to tell you, all I could see were piles of nickels. And after that meeting, I went home, I got my calculator out, and that's all I could see was this compounding effect of, and that's basically what got the ball rolling. Now, it took me a number of years to figure it out. This is one of the areas that I want to talk about today, if we can, is the lack of proper education and understanding, because this is one of the best kept secrets in the world as far as I'm concerned. But I finally figured it out, and with the right help and support, made it to the top. And let me tell you, that's a pretty interesting place to be.
Yeah.
So that's how I got going.
Wow, that's awesome. And I guess kind of more into what you have now. How did you come to network marketing. Like how did that come about? Like I know that's one of your big things is network marketing, and I'm curious how did that start? How did that become like? I know you mentioned the Coca-Cola and stuff like that, but how did that start for you?
Well, the gentleman that was speaking was inviting me to join a company called Amway. And Amway is the largest and most successful network marketing company in the world. My position there at that time was to join that company, which I did. And I was in my early 20s, and I was wet behind the ears, and I had enthusiasm, but I had no idea of what to do. I went out there and I made a huge mess, but there were certain principles in doing the business that I had not learned or didn't figure out. And so I went in and I went out. And that's what I've seen most people do is they go in and with enthusiasm, they crash because they don't have the knowledge to deal with what they deal with. So I spent the next probably 15 years, 12 different companies, trying to figure out this idea of leverage, this idea of compounding, this idea of distribution, all of which were fascinating ideas. And it all stemmed from another statement that I was taught many, many, many years ago was if you can figure out how to position yourself between the manufacturer and the public with something that's hot or needed or wanted, you can write your own ticket. Right. And that idea, the Coca-Cola machine, I mean, man, how do I do this became the truth of the matter. And I spent years doing it, and then I finally figured it out.
Wow, that's awesome. And how is it now? This is your formula, right? This is something you developed yourself?
I think it was a combination of observation and reality of what actually happens and what you have to do and what you need to know, learn, and understand. Now, fundamentally, we do one very simple thing. We just talk. Yeah. So we talk to people, we find out what's important. We find out, but again, it's how you talk and what you present and when you do it and so on and so forth. So there's skill sets that are important, but the bottom line of where I am today and what I'm doing is basically, here's the myth, here's the truth, and this is what you need to do. And here was the other big thing. This isn't for everybody.
Right.
So it's kind of like the Cinderella story. If the shoe fits, you wear it. But if you are interested and you have that aptitude, I mean, when I was a young man, I played baseball. I played Little League. And I'd go up to the batter's box. I'd be in my uniform and I'd have the bat on my shoulder, and that ball would come by me at 90 miles an hour and zoom. I would look at that. Yeah. Okay. And after it had gone by me, then I would swing. You see, and I'd go out in the field, and I wasn't that good of a fielder, and I had no aptitude for that game. But I played with a guy. His name was Butch Goring. And he ended up into the major leagues in baseball, but he had the aptitude to do that, which is a very important characteristic. Anyway, that was another interesting chapter of learning.
Yeah. It's very interesting that you mentioned that. Like, I've definitely known people who start their own business and they kind of crash because they're, like you mentioned before, like they're so enthusiastic. They're so excited to start something. And then like they get toward the middle, maybe the first year, second year, they kind of crash and they kind of lose that opportunity, that business. So it's interesting how you mentioned that it really takes a skill set to really, really build up and really get that motion of like, okay, now how can I propel it? How can I make it even better? You know what I mean? So it's very interesting that you pointed out. And for you, I guess, what do you feel, and maybe you brushed a little bit on it, what do you feel is the skill set someone needs for that? Like how, like someone builds something even from scratch, or maybe not, but how would building something from scratch, what skills do you think a person should have and need?
Back in 1999, in network marketing, there's a tendency to, it's personality driven.
Mm.
And there's a tendency for these big personalities to get up on stage and do the rah and basically operate through almost an intimidation of, when are you going to do this, or how are you going to, you got to get your button gear, all those kind of things. But they don't teach the mechanics of how it actually works.
Right.
Or what are the rules of the game? And one of the first lessons that I learned in business was you've got to understand how it works if you want to make it work. So if you're being a bricklayer, or you're being a carpenter, or, all of these kind of things, or you're trying to fix, I had a plumbing issue maybe a few months ago, and there was a leak, and it went down below the sink, and it was down on the countertop and everything. And I'm saying, wow, call a plumber. And then I called the faucet manufacturer because it was the faucet that was leaking. And they sent out parts, and I went to replace them, and all of a sudden I found out it was just loose. I didn't have to go through that rigmarole. I didn't have to, but I didn't know how it worked. So by not knowing how it works, then you end up making mistakes. You end up not doing the right stuff. You end up wasting time. And then the other side of that, when you know how something works, then it's understanding the result of your activity that then needs to be measured. So sometimes you do something today that doesn't take effect for a week, a month, or even 6 months down the road. But if you don't understand that, you give up too quickly, and then you miss the boat.
Totally. I don't know if you're on YouTube. I don't know if you're on YouTube a lot, but on YouTube, I just, for me personally, because I'm having ideas of like, oh, what business should I do? What would be really cool to start, And I'm noticing a lot of like gurus, they're sort of like, oh, you can start it, and it'd be fast, and you'll make it happen, And I find that sometimes people think that it takes such a short time to build, when it really kind of doesn't. Like, it's sort of like, it takes work and it takes effort to like put something together and actually put everything that you need to do so that something can grow and into an actual product or an actual business of some kind, right?
Yeah, and I think that's really an important point, because like you, I watch, I'm learning how to be a social networker, which is kind of a new aspect. And I see this, real, push, get it, do it now. And I'm not really sure what the intention of these messages are. But for me and my understanding, it takes as long as it takes, number one. And for some people, it can happen real fast, and that depends on experience. That depends on aptitude. That depends on, the idea of understanding what's required to make it work. If you go on a show like HGTV and you see these carpenters and contractors who know how to remodel a house and have the decorating facilities and all of the personnel and so on and so forth, they can take a mess and turn it into a magnificent palace overnight. But when we get into the real world, there's a lot of people that are trying this that are just failing miserably because they don't have all the understanding of what's required to make it work. So probably the biggest lesson there was just understanding how it works and understanding what the activity you do creates over what period of time.
Yeah. So I guess for you, like, you've done so much work, you're like put the backbone, you've done a lot of things that you need to do to get the job done. Right. I guess for people who are listening, and, for those guys, you could tell me, like, what do you feel like, in terms of how would someone get out of that, like get out of the ruin of like, I'm so stuck in, I can't build a business, or I can't do this because I'm so like destroyed, like, I guess, is there some practical or workable things someone can do, especially like for people who want to get into network marketing, or even people who are network marketers that are just failing? Because, some people can be that here in this channel. What do you suggest to those guys? What do you suggest to people who are just kind of ruined, and then you want to give them results, like they want results of something? Like, what would you tell those guys?
Great question. And I'm going to start off with the negative. This kind of a business can be, well, I'm going to liken it to the Olympics. I'm watching the Olympics right now, and I see some of these individuals that are creating incredible effects all by themselves, but really they're not by themselves. They have a team and they have a support system. And so what I observed with a lot of people in networking is they end up at home by themselves without a team and no support. And that's a real negative place to be, where my advice, what I always do when I coach or I teach, is the first thing you want to do is you want to have a teammate. You want to have a partner, somebody that, again, the result of your effort, the end result is based on a lot of agreements that you establish in the marketplace with other people and so on and so forth. So when I was building the business, one of the things that I did was I found, okay, I need somebody to play with. That's the key. I need somebody to play with that's on the same page with me, that's in agreement with what I'm saying, because in those positions, then you can collaborate. And it's kind of like, okay, so let's go do this. Okay, let's go do it. And together you go out and do it. Whereas when you're by yourself, well, okay, I got to go out and do it. Well, I'll have a cup of coffee first. Well, that phone, it's like pretty heavy. I don't know if I can pick it up. And, well, what am I going to say? I don't have, well, all of that stuff gets in the way. But when you develop a partnership, kind of a relationship with somebody else, then it starts to get that agreement. And then the two of you then go and make the plans. And the same thing happens in business. I've done this a number of times where I've had partnerships in business that have gone really big and ended up with hundreds of employees and millions of dollars in business. And again, it was agreement that it would happen, and that's what made it work. So that would be the major lesson there.
Yeah. I think it's interesting when you mention that, like, for some people, I don't know if you've ever had this where, like, with the salesperson, sometimes you're like, oh God, a salesman. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to be with that person. Like with network marketers, how do you find the right person? How do you actually, okay, this is the guy I want to partner with? How, like, you know what I mean? Like, how do I talk to someone? How do I know that's the right person?
My first sales job was selling insurance door to door with a company called Mutual of Omaha up in Canada. And I was selling insurance to farmers. So I'd have to go knock on doors and then start my spiel, et cetera, et cetera. And then you got into the pitch and the close and the pitch and the close and the pitch and the close. I've done investment sales. I've done advertising, yellow pages, you name it. And I didn't like that style of selling. I liken selling to effective communication. Now, here's why this is so different, and it's again not understood. So, what I'm looking for is somebody that wants what I have. I don't want to push what I have on you. It doesn't work. So if you don't want what I have, then you're not qualified for what I want or what I need. So then I'm not going to waste my time. So the initial part of the conversation is to create some form of a relationship and find out, what the heck does this person want? What do they need? And then, do I have that aspect? Now, here's what I learned very early on. 94% of the working population works for one reason: make money. So I then learned how to talk numbers, talk money, in the sense of, how do you make it work? Well, I initially kind of semi-retired when I was 49 years old. And then I played for like 20 years of just doing what I wanted to do, which was, I got involved with many other things and had a ball. But the reason I could do that is I didn't have to go and punch a clock and go work somewhere, because I had built this business. And again, you hear that success from many people who've built their businesses. But, there's a difference. And the difference here is I don't have any of those tethers to a structure, to employees, to, HR, any of those things. I've got freedom, because I create freedom by helping other people become free, and it's a mutual operation. So yeah, that's how I would deal with that one.
Wow. Yeah, it's really funny. I'm actually surprised you were able to retire at 49. That's amazing.
But I say that I never really retired, because in this business, there's an interesting aspect. You have to qualify to get paid. So I always had to make sure I was qualified to get paid. Now, that might have been a half an hour a week or a half an hour a month. The time was different, but I learned this other very important lesson, was that my success was based on helping other people become successful. So I changed from me working for me to me working for other people, which was a whole different kettle of fish, and so much more rewarding, because it was like, okay, watching the smiles on people's faces and their achievements and it was just awesome. So, and that's what I do now. So I help people gain an understanding. I can't do the work for you. I can't do your work. You've got to do the work. But if you're guided to do the right work, it'll be easier. And if you figure this out, man, I'm still being paid on the work I did 35 years ago.
Wow.
And it just keeps ticking. Yeah. I know, it just keeps ticking.
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring that point up, because I know, for me, I love helping people and I love to talk to people. I'm not a counselor necessarily, but I do talk to people about their problems and see what resolution we can come up with that problem. That's one of my favorite things, is how can we help solve that problem? I guess for you, because you've had experiences in a lot of different things. And I guess for you, why help people? Why change the mindset of, making dollar to dollar, but instead changing the mindset of, to be successful, I help others thrive. Like, can you tell me more about that? Like how that is,
Okay, so that we have to have a little technology here and understanding of how this business works. So this business works in two ways. The first way is by developing a customer base. So you go out there and you introduce your products to the people that what we call your sphere of influence. What you could call it, your warm market, your hot market, but it's your sphere of influence. So there's that concept. The second thing that we do is we teach others or develop others who want to distribute the product to their warm market. So I'd say to you, Josh, well, if I helped you build a business where you're making $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 a month, and you know what to do, and you've got an organization and you're distributing products throughout the United States and Latin America and other parts of the world, and you're having a ball, are you going to walk away from that? Probably
not. Of course
not. So then I look at that and say, okay, so if I help you what if I help 3 people do that? And so again, understanding how network marketing works, I'm pretty much going to make what you make. So it behooves me. I mean, it really behooves me to help support you, because once you've got it, then I can go do it with somebody else, or I can go golfing, or I can go on a vacation, or, however you want to do it. And anywhere I go, I can talk about what I do if the situation is right. But here's the lesson: just don't barf on people. Right. Be intelligent about what you do, just like everybody else is. That if the shoe fits, wear it. If it doesn't, then talk about something else.
Right. That's interesting that you mentioned that.
So that's why you want to help other people.
Yeah, it's really fascinating because, helping has always been my passion, helping others do well. And it makes so much sense how it lines up where, like, if you make them do well, you're also doing well as well, because you're helping others do well, So that's really very interesting that you mentioned that.
And it plays to the previous point. It plays to the previous point of, the agreement. So it's like, okay, any opportunity, any business that you're not familiar with or you don't understand how it works, once you know how it works, then you make it. It's easy to make it work. So to help somebody get to that point is the key issue.
It's interesting. So I guess in terms of now look at the end, right? In terms of success, like being successful and like really making sure that you succeed, how do you identify, how do you look for the right people and the right, like when you're doing network marketing, I guess, how do you identify people or find your ideal person that you want to do a work with? How do you find that?
This is like the dating game. It's kind of, how do you find the right opposites, the spouse, the term, the other person that you want to spend your time with. And I coined this phrase and I use it all the time. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. So my job is to, the more enthusiastic I am about what I'm going to do, the more that's going to attract attention and the easier it's going to be to get into a decent conversation, not a pissing contest, but a decent conversation about what it is. And if the shoe fits, wears it. And what I found was by doing that, if there was a real problem and I explained how it really works and what you really need to do for the right person, it made sense. It's like my introduction. The guy says, "How would you like to own a Coke machine on every corner and every time somebody bought a Coke, you made a nickel?" And it's like that turned me into a lifelong network marketer. Why? I don't know. I do know, but I don't know.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, good.
So there you go.
And then I guess it's a really cool story. And I really, thank you for your time. Obviously we're not coming to the end yet, but it's really amazing that some of the things that you're telling, because I think a lot of it's super helpful. And I really get, really amazing to understand. I hope my audience does too, is like, how do I change? What do I need to do in order to be successful? Because people want to have success. People want to do things the right way, but a lot of people want shortcuts. A lot of people want to do things that they wanted to get it really fast, but it may not be, it's not really possible. It's just it's what to do and how to do it,
Yeah. And I think that I'll just say this. I sponsored a guy who sponsored a person who sponsored a person who sponsored a gal, and she ended up doing $285 million worth of business in 27 years.
Yeah. Now,
I didn't do that. I got paid on what she did, but she did it. Now, I put in I put in a time learning how to do the business. It's totally different today. You can do it much quicker. But again, it's like most people work 40, 50 years. Now, I'm working today because I realized that if I don't do something, I'm going to get stale and old and, die. I don't want to do that right now. I still got lots of energy and I still love to play. But it's kind of like, look at Warren Buffett. Look at anybody that's been successful. They're still out there because they are engaged. They love to do it. So I think that's what's important. If it's something that's of interest, then you want to sit down and talk about it.
Totally. Okay, good. And then I have one last thing actually I would love to go over with you because, some of my audiences are curious and sometimes they're not. But sometimes I'm more curious than everyone else because I'm Mr. Curious guy, So, how do you determine, how does your understanding of things in terms of numbers, plans, long and short-term things, how does that all play a part in either a business or even just like, in terms of like, I'm looking at times of finances, right? Like how could understanding the numbers and planning and short-term, long-term gains, right? Like how could anyone learn and know what's the right thing, what's the wrong thing? You know what I mean?
Darn good question.
Yeah.
And it's not a simple answer, but the first thing is you have to know what it is that you want. Because when you know what you want, then you can then have a purpose to go after that. And it's the purpose that causes your drive, your desire, and your commitment to do the activities. Then you have to understand how it works and what you need to do and so on and so forth. Just like if you wanted to be a doctor, what do you have to do to be a doctor and how much time's involved and so on and so forth. Then you get the mindset around your willingness to participate and play. So again, circumstance is the key here. Understand the circumstance. And once the circumstance is understood, then you can pretty easily work out the details of what you need to do for you. And again, this may not be an area that is important to you, or you want to do it, or you have the aptitude or desire to do it. You might want to be an artist or, be an Olympic athlete. I mean, that's what's so wonderful. This is just an option, but it's one hell of a great option if you figure it out and go to work. So the next advice would be find a mentor, find a coach, find somebody that's got the experience and the success, and then learn the details. And I have to tell you, there aren't that many people that are going to really tell you the rock bottom details, between the ugly and the pleasurable, because it's a personality driven business. And some people have great personalities, and so people get enamored with those personalities versus understanding the details. Anyway.
Right. And I guess for people who want to, I guess after this call, they're probably going to like, oh man, I should find myself a mentor. How do you suggest people find a good mentor? Like, what do you consider? What should someone consider in finding a good mentor in any areas, even just network marketing? How would someone find someone like that, do you think?
Well, there's a number of ways. So in our business, typically, whatever company that you're associated with has a hierarchy of people that have had success. And there are good people that want to help. So that's where I would reach out in that respect. For me, if you're really interested, I'm going to make an offer here to, you subscribe and I'll send you a detailed article on the 10 things that help make me successful. And in that process, you can have a one-on-one and we can discuss this. And there's no obligation to any of this, but I can maybe give you some more specific ideas of what you can do for who you are. Because that's really what you have to look at is who are you? What are you after? What are you trying to accomplish? And what skill sets do you have or what are you willing to do to get the job done becomes the key issue.
Nice. That's really good advice. And I think a lot of us, especially here who are listening, kind of appreciate that. I think it's really, really good to talk to someone who is very successful in that area, So of course, I thank you for spending time with us and, talking to me. I'd love to learn more. Maybe after this call, we could definitely chat up more about how we also help and also how we become a network marketer maybe. But, I definitely love
webpage.
Yes. So I guess for people who are listening, go ahead.
Yeah, no, for those that are listening, it's besmarterwithdave.com. besmarterwithdave.com.
Yeah. How can I connect with you? Is this the way they connect with you?
Yeah, totally the way they connect with me. Real simple.
Awesome.
I mean,
good.
I've talked to people in stadiums and I would always give out my phone number. I'd give out my phone number on the air, but, I think what we'll do is we'll do it this way and then we can talk.
Awesome. Well, cool. It was a good conversation. And I hope we get to work together. And I think we'll have a blast together.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime, right. Josh, just give me a call.
All right. So thanks for joining us, guys. And definitely, again, if you guys like this episode, please, like it, subscribe, and hope to guys see you in the next one.